Welcome to our annual Breakfast with our Congressman. We're so happy today that Congressman Huizenga is with us. I'm Jane Clark. I'm president of the Michigan West Coast Chamber, and we appreciate your participation in this event. I want to introduce and welcome everyone here who's in person. We have a sold-out crowd today. We're so happy you joined us. And we have many attendees that are watching digitally today. So thank you also to our digital attendees for being with us. We are watching the COVID numbers so very carefully. And so for the protection of all of us, I am going to ask, as you finish your breakfast, to go ahead and put your masks back on. And now I'd like to introduce and welcome back our annual MC of this program, Mike Hill. Mike is with Colebrook Insurance. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you very much, Jane. It is great to be back with all of you again this year. First and foremost, I want to say a big thank you to the VoteWorks staff for putting this together and making this happen for us. So a round of applause for them. If you haven't noticed, we do have our sponsors scrolling on the screens up here, and I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors. This event would not happen without their generous support, so thank you to all of them for being a part of it. And for those veterans in the room, you probably have heard the name Huntington Bank in the past if you've been to these events, because they've been a long time presenting sponsor of this event. And at this time, I'd like to invite Krista Flynn, the West Michigan Region President for Huntington Bank, up to introduce our main event this morning, Congressman Huizenga.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, everyone. I am Krista Flynn, President of Huntington Bank for West Michigan. I'm so glad to be here today. As the combination of Huntington and TCF Bank allows me even greater opportunity to engage deeply with our West Michigan and Lakeshore communities. Huntington, like so many others in the room today, has a long-standing relationship with Congressman Huizenga, going back to the time in the state legislature. Congressman Huizenga is a champion for West Michigan, as you all know, and we have unique appreciation for his service at Huntington because of his role in one of the most sought-after and influential committees in Congress, the House Financial Services Committee. We like to say at Huntington that our primary goal is simply to make people's lives better, for our clients, for our colleagues, and for our communities. Clearly, this is in line with what Bill does every day. He puts accountability and responsibility on himself to represent this district, our state, and frankly, the Midwest and Great Lakes region, to make lives better. So it's no surprise, as a result of his leadership, that as the political pendulum swing, as they always do, the congressman is often discussed as a future committee chair, a role that would be particularly impactful to our region and our state. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for allowing Huntington Bank to be part of this vibrant business community, and welcome to Congressman Huizenga.
That's pretty awesome. I'd vote for that guy, I think. I don't know. Welcome, Bill. Hey, good to be back, finally, again, right? I think we were trying to do the math. 2 years ago was the last time we did this at the Civic Center, so it was a little bit of a shift 2 years ago, and then we all know what happened as I'm looking out at the sea of masks and the things that have been going on, and so it is really good to be back in person, and I know that it is both in person and virtual. That is life these days. Whatever normal life is going to be, I have no idea. I don't think any of us actually do. We know that there's certainly challenges that are ahead for us, not just on the healthcare side, but economically, societally. You look at what's been happening in schools and kids and all those kinds of things. That's on, I think, foremost and top of mind for a lot of policymakers, whether it's at the state or county or local level, in addition to the House. But it is nice to be back in the same room, isn't it? Yeah, everybody nodding on that one.
I've got a list of questions for you, but if you have some opening remarks you care to share, feel free to have at it, and then we can dive in.
Yeah, we can. We'll do maybe real quick. I did want to acknowledge a special person that this country lost yesterday with Bob Dole. And there's some reasons why I think he's a very special guy. One, obviously, when you're in my kind of line of work, you look at someone like that who served his country so admirably and loyally for so long, and what he was able to do. But I actually have some personal connections in with Bob Dole, and they go back to my dad. Many of you have known I've talked about my dad over the years. Dad was in a B-24 crash 2 days before Christmas in 1944 in Italy. Bob Dole had been injured in Italy as well, kind of in that Naples area, and I think it was Monte Cassino is where he was actually injured. But they found themselves in the same hospital in Chicago. And my dad had a chance to meet Bob Dole and Daniel Patrick Inouye, who of course famously became Bob Dole, and Daniel Patrick Inouye from Hawaii, the senator from Hawaii, did a tremendous amount of work. So my dad had really this, as you can imagine, amazing respect for Bob Dole. Of course, being a young political science major, I worked on all the campaigns that he had done when he ran for president in '96. And then getting to this position and working for Hookstride, I just had a chance to meet him over the years. But when I got to Washington, D.C., one of the things that I loved to do was welcome honor flights. And Bob Dole, every day that he possibly physically could, would be down at the World War II Memorial. And they had a chair there for him. And he would greet these guys as they would come in. And he would reminisce with them and tell stories and all those things and really spend time with them. So I had gone to an honor flight that was from Michigan. We had hoped to get my dad on the honor flight. He was not well enough to do so, but I went down there, and sure enough, Bob Dole was there. And I reintroduced myself, told him about the connection with my dad at the hospital, and I said, would you mind if I get a photo? I'd love to show my dad a photo. And he's like, sure, we can do that, but why don't we cut him a little message too? He was a very sharp guy, very sharp guy. And I said, really? And he was like, yeah, pull that phone out of your pocket. So I pull my phone out, and I got this video of Bob Dole talking to my dad.
Pretty cool.
It was awesome. I mean, to have that generation. I mean, there is a reason why they called this the greatest generation, don't you think? I mean, these were people that persevered. Yeah. Now we need to rise. We need to do those things as well. And certainly, I think we need a lot more of the Bob Dole type, Gerald Huizenga types than we've got a lot of the junk that's going on now today. I would think you probably agree with that as well. And it certainly is inspirational for me watching somebody like Bob Dole and others that serve. So that was I just wanted to make that little connection to make sure that we were thinking about that for the day.
Thank you for doing that. So I want to start here a little bit more locally, and then we'll kind of go broad to the federal level, which is the area that you're primarily focused on. So when I started participating in chamber events about, 20 years ago now, I used to go to Meet Pete breakfast, and then it became the Breakfast with Bill. A year from now, we don't know what we're going to call it, because we have this new redistricting commission, and we're not exactly sure what's going to happen. 10 years ago, we were fortunate to have Congressman Upton redistricted into our area, so we have a breakfast with him or a lunch with him as well. So talk to us a little bit about what redistricting looks like from your perspective and what we might anticipate this time next year.
Well, thanks everybody. Good to be here with you. In all seriousness, I will be very careful and selective about what I say and how I say it, because everybody is expecting that these are all going to go into the courts, and there's going to be lawsuits over this. I would prefer not to get dragged into one of those, and so I'm going to be selective about what I have to say. I will say this, and I was public about this, I was very concerned and critical of the idea of going to a commission, because I did not believe it was going to work well, the way that it was structured. We have nobody from West Michigan. And what I mean is nobody, it's not just Kent County, Ottawa County, Muskegon County, Allegan County. Closest is Reed City and Battle Creek on the entire west side of the state. It is...
Just to clarify, the members of this committee, that's as far west as the representation is.
Yeah, yeah. The challenge that I think that the commission attempted to, or the proposal attempted to get at is quote unquote gerrymandering. Michigan was operating under something called the APOL standards, which had been a state Supreme Court case that said you have to hold county, municipal, and township lines together as much as you physically possibly can. So in other words, don't go in and try to break up counties. Don't try to break up townships or municipalities if you can avoid it at all. That has been set aside. The University of Michigan had a white paper where they suggested that the commission ignore county lines, municipal lines, and township lines. I will note that that is the basic form of government for the state. I know Phil Kyers is here, and I'm sure some of our other, Terry Nienhuis, some of our other local, Brad Slaw's here. We've got people at that local, county, and state level. That is the basic function that county governments have, right? That township governments have. So they were told to set that aside and ignore it. And I will let you make your own judgments as you look at these maps, whether you think gerrymandering has occurred or not. The Apple map has a congressional seat that runs from Muskegon, Ottawa, Allegan, Van Buren, and Berrien County all the way down to the Indiana line. It creates a congressional district that links city of Grand Rapids, goes south to the city of Kalamazoo. There's iterations, that's one map. There's two other maps that are the quote-unquote preferred maps. I'm not sure they were supposed to come up with a preferred map. I'm not sure how 3 is preferred, but it sounds like options to me. But the other two have Ottawa County getting split up into 3 different congressional seats. 3. We're the fastest growing county in the state, 7th largest county in the entire state, and we often know that when your representation gets that dispersed, really you have to question what is your representation going to be, and it's going to be the same thing at the state Senate level and the state House level as well. So we don't know what exactly is going to happen. Here's the timeline. December 30, the commission is targeting naming one of those 3 congressional maps to be the map, at which point we need to start moving forward with getting signatures. We have an April deadline for filing for the November election, for the August primary, and then of course the November election. A little hard to collect signatures when you don't know which counties you have to actually go and collect those in. Bit of a challenge. So what we do know is that both the state Democrat Party and the state Republican Party said that they believe that there will be lawsuits over this. If the commission changes anything on any of the lines, either at the state House, state Senate, or the congressional level, that will then trigger an additional 45-day comment period. So if they change anything from any of those maps on December 30, that then means you're not getting another crack at declaring the map until basically the middle of February. Again, April deadline for signatures and all those things. So it's going to be a challenge. There's going to be a real challenge. They clearly have shown that there is a desire to try to, in their words, kind of create fairness. I will note that Michigan is a 7-7 split, Republicans versus Democrats, in the current configuration that we have. We lose a seat, so some states that are going through similar things have declared, well, we're going to set aside this process. We're just going to have everybody run in the same seats again. We don't have that option. In the 80s, there was a situation in Ohio where they lost a seat where they had people running at large, and the top certain number of candidates, whoever the top vote getters are statewide, then become the members of Congress. We don't really know what this is going to look like. And my last understanding is that if the commission can't reach a consensus, you have to have 2 of the Republicans, 2 of the Democrats, 2 of the independents all agree on a map. I've been told by some of the legal folks that they believe that at the end of the day, they could put any and all of the eligible maps in a hat and draw it out of the hat. I think there's going to be a couple of lawsuits. I'm just suspecting. And at that point, there is nothing in the constitutional amendment that created the commission to remedy that impasse. There's no legislative remedy, there's no executive remedy, and there's no judicial remedy. So it could literally be that the state Supreme Court says, all right, commission, here you go, you got to do another map. At which point they do another map, and the 45-day comment period comes up, and so you're seeing the challenges with the calendar. So buckle up and hang on. Nobody knows what this is really going to look like here in the next year.
We might need more microphones, is what you're saying.
Could be.
All right, so
Or this turns into a drinking lunch kind of. Did I just say that? Natalie's looking at me like, what are you saying?
So going more federal level now, so we've got 30 days left, roughly, not quite, of 2021, and then into 2022, it being an election year. Sometimes I call it crazy time, not a lot of stuff necessarily gets done during an election year, but for you to consider 2022 a legislative success, what would you like to accomplish yourself or see accomplished?
Yeah, there's kind of 2 ways of answering that, aspirationally as well as realistically, right? Realistically, I'm not going to be in the majority in the House. Democrats are in control of the Senate, and obviously Democrats are in control of the White House. So they run the agenda. That's simply what is happening. And in the House, it's a little different. Simple majority. You can declare anything. You can declare the sky purple, and that could be the law. Senate, obviously, with filibuster. Typically, there has to be a 60-vote threshold, so a little more of a speed bump there. What I anticipate I'll be doing a lot of is, frankly, defense. All right, trying to mitigate things that I think are bad, trying to emphasize some of the things that I think are good, trying to make sure that as it's being moved forward, I'm hopefully going to have and rely on some of those relationships that I've got on the other side of the aisle to try to help tweak this a little bit as we move along. Aspirationally, what I would love to do is get a budget process in place. That would be first and foremost something that would be extremely helpful because then you've got predictability. All right. All of you folks touch business or county government or state government one way, shape, or form. Can you imagine going in and saying, oh, well, we're going to keep your funding up for 2 weeks, and then we're going to come back and figure out whether that's really going to be the number that you have to operate and plan on for the rest of the year. This is Department of Defense, this is social services, this is all those things that are happening on a daily basis, and Social Security checks will go up. The prisons will stay operating. TSA will stay operating because those have been deemed essential. However, when you have training, that's out the window. When you have improvements, when you have equipment upgrades, when you have all those kinds of things, everything gets frozen at that point, and you can't move forward. And it's very, very frustrating. So that would be something that aspirationally I'd like to continue to work on, but I'm afraid that's probably not going to be happening, certainly as we're going into this. It'll be another continuing resolution, potentially with a big giant omnibus bill, or sometimes they break it up into 2 or 3. But at the end of the day, how I describe it, that's like weeding your garden with a lawnmower. right? You know, sure, you knocked down the weeds, but you also took out the tomatoes and the beans, right? And so part of the idea of going through an appropriations process and a spending process and that analysis, whether you're at the city level or whether you're at the national level, is to go figure out what's working, do more of that, what's not working, how about we evaluate that and figure out whether it needs to be on life support yet or whether we can get rid of it, and let's move forward. And it's been very, very difficult to be able to do that.
So something very similar to what you were just touching on the budgeting process of the continuing resolution. Another thing that's staring our country in the face and you in the face is the need to increase the debt limit. Can you speak to, number one, what your stance is on that, and will you be voting in favor of raising the debt limit? But then number two, anything that you are aware of that you might have been working on that can help us get out of this goat rodeos, as I think you referred to it?
That's the nicer version of what I to describe it as, but yes, and I put my glasses on because yes, I'm getting that age, but I've got some very specific things I want to hit on that because this is an area where we're trying to make some progress. The debt ceiling has become a political football, no doubt. It was initially put in place to try to make us pause and think about the spending that we are doing. Quite honestly, we're throwing around trillions like it's Wednesday night poker night. You know, I know nobody plays poker in Holland, but yes, I'm looking at you, a couple of you folks. But in all seriousness, I mean, and you know, Mitch McConnell and a couple of others had talked about this. You know, this was the first time when we passed the initial CARES Act on the response to COVID that we pierced that $1 trillion veil. That was the first time we had ever gone beyond that $1 trillion threshold. And a lot of people around D.C. were warning, this is going to become not an exception, but the rule. This is going to be now the new goalpost for what it means to be compassionate, what it means to be effective, what it means to be serious about spending. And they were absolutely right. Go to the infrastructure bill. Shelley Moore Capito talks about this, where she was the main negotiator for the Senate. And she's at the White House, and she lays out this list. It was about $650, $700 billion. It would have been the largest single transportation bill that's ever passed in the history of our country. And she's saying there is bipartisan support for this. You're not going to get everybody because some people think it's too big, but you are going to get a huge bipartisan support vote out of the Senate if we can agree on this today. The White House's response was it has to be $1 trillion. She said, okay, well, that's great. I mean, what programs do you want to beef up? What programs do you want to add? You know, let's have this discussion. The answer was it has to be $1 trillion. Well, so only in Washington, D.C. does let's be generous, a $700 billion spending bill and $1 trillion spending bill get compromised at $1.2 trillion, right? This is Washington, D.C. math. And suddenly we find ourselves in this position. I voted for those. There was 5 initial COVID response bills, everything from the Paycheck Protection Program, which I'm assuming a lot of you took advantage of and should have and needed to. So there was these 5 programs that spent more money than we had ever spent before. And I supported those because they were a bipartisan consensus on the direction of where we needed to go. The spending that has happened since then has been literally one party, and including the Build Back Better. I pejoratively call it the Buy Back Voters Act, but I'll let you decide. The simple fact is we have racked up spending like we have never had this before. In response to that, there was a group of us that got together. It was 30 Republicans and 30 Democrats, and we very unoriginally called ourselves the 30 by 30 group. The 30 by 30 group is we're morphing into another group that is conscious of basically our spending. We're wanting to have a serious-minded conversation about our spending, the effects, the causes of it, but the effects of it for our future. And the debt ceiling plays into that because in previous years, the debt ceiling has always been sort of this thing that you attach some sort of reform to. And in the past, I've voted for some of the debt ceiling increases because there had been some reforms to it. And I voted against debt ceiling reforms or debt ceiling increases because there's been zero attached with it. Well, that's where we're at today. There's going to be zero reforms in this debt ceiling. I'm open to looking at what's going to happen, but I don't see a path where there's going to have any kind of reform to this. So I'm going to be a no. The response to that now is our 30 by 30 group has come up with a legislative response to that. And it gets a little wonkish. I won't go into all of this, but the idea is to start focusing on fiscal responsibility and acknowledging the problem. Right? We have to acknowledge what is going on. And this bill would provide 2 new temporary avenues to suspend the debt limit. First, if Congress passes a concurrent debt budget resolution that meets a certain fiscal threshold, which is reducing the debt and the GDP, not spending, but the debt and the debt to GDP ratio, if we can reduce that by 5% over a 10-year window. So we're going to have an increase in spending. The question is, can we bend that curve a little? I don't want to use that. That was like we were only supposed to bend the curve for 2 weeks, I think, before with the mask. So let's leave that one aside. We're gonna lower that ramp, that spending ramp, and it has to be over 5% over a 10-year period. And if we're able to do that, we're looking at making some real effect. I mean, this is what happened when in the 1990s under Clinton and the Republicans in the House and the Senate. They still increased spending, but they slowed the growth of spending, and the economy caught up, and it took them down to a balanced budget. I mean, we literally had a balanced budget. So if we can't do that, the second is then, if we can't do a budget resolution by April 15, then the president has the authority to be able to do a temporary suspension of the debt ceiling, but it is subject to the disapproval vote of the House and the Senate. Meaning, if we don't like it, then we vote to repeal that. And what it does, though, is for the president to have that, it forces Congress's hand to do some integrated processes with a couple of the different committees. And this is where it gets a little complicated, but the 60-vote threshold still is in there for the Senate. The House has multiple committees that have to actually put some work in, but it hopefully pulls this out of the political football arena and definition, and makes it far more effective as we're trying to go in and just be realistic. That's the thing I think most of us are looking for, is can you just be realistic on what our spending needs are, what our revenues are going to be. By the way, we did have record revenues after the tax cut that we were up, and that's got to be part of the conversation that we are having, and it's simply not happening right now, for the most part. And mostly, this is just about how much can you spend. And that spending is a measurement of your compassion and your passion for this country. And it's like, well, I would actually flip it around. I think we need to show some passion for this country and start making some hard decisions.
So thank you for your effort on that. So if you are this 30 by 30 group are successful, the whole debt ceiling drama may become a thing of the past, but it's going to take some work to get us there. Is that correct?
It definitely is going to take work to get there. This is maybe one of those aspirational things. We're trying to normalize this conversation. We are trying to familiarize it. We are trying to have constituents start asking. I get it. I get asked about it quite a bit. What are you doing about the spending? What are you going to do about the debt? What are you going to be doing about this for our future of our kids and our grandkids? I get asked that all the time. Not all of my colleagues are. So that's part of the message we're trying to get out to the rest of the country.
So speaking of spending and debt, you touched on $600 to $700 billion infrastructure package that became a $1.2 trillion infrastructure package. But you voted against that. Can you talk about why you voted against it, and we'll start there.
Yeah, again, because I think it overshot, right? And look, we all remember those shovel-ready jobs that weren't so shovel-ready back in the day, right? The same thing is happening, right? You only have so much infrastructure. You look at the average time that it takes to get an environmental permit for some of these major works. It is years, right? So here we are authorizing bills that have, this authorizing bill is going in and authorizing projects that haven't done environmental studies, haven't even done pre-engineering. And we're just jamming this money in. And pun intended, the pipeline's only so big, right? You can't just keep jamming more and more and more into it. And it's causing some real issues. And then you've got resource things, right? I mean, you all know my family's been involved in construction for 3 generations now. I own our little sand and gravel operation. My cousin owns the concrete company. And I can tell you that, and anybody, I see Chuck Enid's here and others that are involved in construction, I mean, we know what's been happening in supply chain. We know what's been happening with aggregate opportunities and options. And I know that's kind of controversial. Brad and the county folks and the state folks have been sort of dueling it out, how you're going to mine gravel and those kinds of things. But we aren't ready for it, right? And it is, again, it's, in my opinion, it's more about the window dressing than it is about the actual projects. And are there projects? Absolutely. That need to be done. Absolutely they do. And I would include, and this is something I've definitely have come a long way about, is like broadband, right? We know that there's information deserts, both urban and rural. I represent a district that I would argue is probably one of the most diverse in the country, because we're a manufacturing district, but we're also an agriculture district, but we're also a tourism district. I've got the second poorest county in the state, Lake County, which is the top 100 poorest counties in the country. And I also have some of the wealthiest zip codes in the state of Michigan. And you look, there is an absolute disparity, right? And both urban setting, when I'm going up to Muskegon and Muskegon Heights, or even here as the challenges that Holland Public Schools have had, and those kinds of things going into a COVID lockdown or into a school lockdown, how are we making sure these kids aren't falling behind? And most economists will tell you that we don't have just a 1-year blip or 2-year blip. There's going to be a 3 to 5 year education deficit here with what has been going on because of what has happened as we've been trying to manage our way through that. So I think there is some room for expansion of definitions of what infrastructure is. Healthcare to me is not infrastructure. Childcare to me is not infrastructure. And I get it, people will argue that it is, and it might be a worthy program, but don't call it infrastructure, right? That is a different program that needs to be discussed. And instead, this is the classic, it's appropriate, we've got the Christmas tree here. It's just like throw more stuff on the Christmas tree, and it quote unquote has to pass, so we'll just take this all in. And it's very sloppy, it's not focused, and I don't think it's respectful to taxpayers, frankly.
So speaking of Christmas trees, the infrastructure was a pretty nice one, but there's a bigger one that passed the House that's sitting in the Senate right now. Can you talk to us a little bit about, did you vote in favor of the Build Back Better law or bill that passed the House? And 2, do you think it's going to pass the Senate? If not, why not?
Yeah, I think I gave you a clue when I called it the Buy Back Voters Act, but no, I did not support that. There has been zero effort at a true attempt at bipartisan negotiations on this, certainly in the House. And I will admit I've never prayed for Joe Manchin quite so much before as I have been recently. was supposed to be a joke, but apparently in Holland, people take our prayers very seriously, and of course, we want to pray for Joe Biden too, and everybody else. I appreciate that. We all need it, trust me. The Build Back Better it's a massive spending bill. I mean, it's a big government spending bill. That's really what it is. And that has been the goal and the objective. And again, we can debate the merits of what's in it, but apparently me being a no vote means I hate kids, I hate the elderly, I hate the environment, I hate infrastructure, and it's like, no, actually I work very hard to support those things. It's how are you going to do it? And look, the inflationary pressures that we all have seen have been real, right? Let me ask, does everybody feel, well, maybe I put it this way, anybody, and this is going to be tough, if you want to take the scorn, but has anybody not felt inflationary pressures? One guy. So you haven't gone to the gas station. To me, you look at what's going on, and you've got people walking into the grocery store with more money in their pocket, right? Wages are up, 4.6%. Wages are up, but we have seen in our region a 6.6 increase in the CPI. Okay, that's a 2% delta. That is significant. So last week we had Jay Powell and Janet Yellen in front of our committee, talking about state of the economy. Jay Powell had just gotten the news that he was going to be reappointed. He suddenly got a little more hawkish on what he thought was happening with the economy. Chair Yellen, who I actually know fairly well, said in her prepared remarks, she was talking about the economy, and she was using the line that the administration says, which is passing Build Back Better, getting more spending will actually lower inflationary pressures. Now, I'm a fairly simple guy from Zeeland, Michigan, who got his BA from Holland College, but I do know the X and Y's axis of economics, supply and demand. And Jay Powell was talking about the supply side, but also, and the supply chain pressures that we've had, but he also was talking about the demand side. And the demand side has been created because if you talk to anybody in banking, and I know Huntington has this, I know, you name it, any credit union or bank around will tell you that their deposits are up. They have never had their members have this much money in that savings institution. And we have very few experiences that we can do, or certainly fewer experiences, so we are demanding more goods, right? We're ordering more stuff. And that is creating demand. So my question, I was the last one, and they went long, and so I put on the back burner. I wasn't able to ask this question, but it was interesting watching Jay Powell and Secretary Yellen kind of coming at this at very different ways. If we have additional spending, by definition, we are going to have more demand, right? That surplus of spending that we have had. So we are going to have an increase in demand with a decrease in supply. How is that not inflationary? How is that not going to create more pressure? And we have, all of you that are involved in any kind of line of work have all come to me and said, we can't find employees, right? I'm assuming, has anybody not had that problem? Please indicate this, because this will be new. I will not name the particular fast food restaurant that I drive past often on River Avenue on the north side that has on its marquee $21 per hour. 21 bucks an hour. You gotta sell a heck of a lot of Happy Meals for 21 bucks an hour, right? The Taco Bell that's opening out by by Zeeland, across from Zeeland Farm Services, $500 signing bonus at 16 bucks an hour. All right? So and I had this, I went rounds with this on Jay Powell, both privately and publicly, when he was talking about, well, we expect that, I think the economic term is a downward drift of wages. It's like, okay, so I've got my little gravel pit, and I've got Cole, who's 21 years old, and I've had to give Cole about $2.50, maybe $3 more an hour from where he was a year and a half ago. How do I go back to Cole and go, hey, bud, sorry about that $2.50 raise. I need $1 of that back per hour. Cole's going to be like, yeah, I'm out of here, right? And all of the employers are feeling like that. What I hear from people is that they're anticipating greater efficiencies through automation, right? By the way, that means fewer jobs, fewer people working. I was just at a restaurant up in Grand Haven for the tree lighting, where they had the bus boy is no longer a bus boy. It's a robot that's going around, and they're loading dishes on it, right? You're seeing this in all kinds of settings. And the inflationary process and pressure is real. To deny it, whether it's in energy, whether it's in food, and whether it is in other goods and services that we have, to deny that, I think, is to deny gravity. Economic gravity, certainly. And why this administration still tries to continue to do that is beyond me. So, no, I do not believe that we need additional stimulus spending on this. We have got billions of dollars that are allocated and unspent. The state of Michigan is sitting on over $4 billion of federal money that they cannot spend because it's outside the time frame and outside the definitions. You want to know how I would have liked to have done infrastructure? I would have said to Brad and Roger Victory and everybody else, you guys got $4 billion, go use half of that on infrastructure. What could you do with $2 billion of infrastructure today, which, by the way, is in the state bank account? You could get some projects done, right? And it wouldn't be all of this other junk that's getting added into it. So that's the kind of thing. I think it just takes some common sense things that we need to do like that to say, let's play out the programs that we have already allocated money to. Let's expand definitions if we need to do that so that that money can then be used in other areas. By the way, could be rural broadband, could be urbanized broadband, could be a number of those things. And you're not going to have to wait and put it on a big giant credit card.
What is the likelihood that you think some version of this is going to get to the Senate this year?
Again, I'm back to praying for Joe Manchin. He's been pretty upfront that he doesn't like the direction that this has been going. It's been interesting seeing the progressives, and it is a strong part of the folks on the other side of the aisle. They have moved, right? Rashida Tlaib very famously had said that $3.5 trillion was a floor, not a ceiling. They are down from that on paper. Here's how they got down from that, though. It's $1.75 trillion. We forget about this. The 0.75 is $750 billion, by the way. But they took 10-year window, so it's a 10-year budget window. So we only in Washington do we look out 10 years for our spending. But what they did is they took these programs that they have said they want to be permanent, and they said, well, we're only going to authorize it for 5 years or 3 years. There's one major program that's for 1 year. Well, so you're counting 10 years of revenue, 1 year of spending, and you said, well, we cut the budget. So we made the numbers work. That's not how you made the numbers work. I mean, that's like saying, I've got revenue for my company projected, and I'm going to put a piece of equipment in that's going to allow me to get this projection of this revenue for 10 years. But I'm only going to take it and look at what it's going to cost me for 1 year or 5 years, even though you now have additional costs every year to maintain it and all the other stuff. Well, that's just not how reality works. So don't buy this whole, we compromised and we cut it down. All they did was literally shorten up the time window of when they were going to do the spending. And I don't know the clock is running against them. There's a number of very big, other big items that need to get tackled. It really depends on how much the president leans in on this. If this is what he really wants to do. By the way, when he was in Howell a month and a half ago or so, he admitted this. He said, folks, don't look at the number and don't look at the time frame. Look at the program, because he knows once they get the program put in place, it's very difficult to get it out. And you look at what happened with the ACA and some of the provisions of that, Dodd-Frank, a number of others. So that really is the goal and objective, is get these programs in place, and we'll worry about the funding and later.
So last question before we wrap it up. There's been a lot of misinformation about lots of topics, but no topic more than COVID, it seems. And I saw on the internet recently, so it must be true, that you voted to create a vaccine database. Is that correct? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I don't know if you could hear his sarcasm, and he had his tongue firmly planted in his cheek, but it is true. In fact, I'm going to be going on the air on Wood Radio at 9:30 to talk about this because it has been very, very pervasive. And I watched a couple of evening talking heads on a news channel or infotainment channel that were talking about this, and really they're trying to foment more, discourse. And the claim is that by modernizing the vaccine information that each state currently holds, they work with county health departments, and then they maintain this list, which does not have any personally identifiable information. PII is the gold standard, right? You do not want your name, social security number, address, date of birth, all of those things locked in. What they are claiming is that this vote, when there was 80 of us Republicans, it was a suspension vote. It was expected it was going to be widely accepted, but because it had vaccine registry in the name of the title, that suddenly got labeled a national registry. And so you've got big liberals like Dan Crenshaw. Anybody know who Dan Crenshaw is? Okay, very conservative. Again, now it's my turn at apparently bad sarcasm. But you had a whole bunch of conservatives that voted for this because the reason why we did that is when in one of those massive spending bills, there was actually a loophole that was left open that could allow the federal government to start putting pressure on these lists and with the vaccine mandate. We didn't even get to that and some of the effects on business that might have. And this was an attempt to actually close it up and to secure and make sure that personally identifiable information is not included on any of this, which it could have been. And now suddenly, I think it's for raising money, or if it's for ratings, I don't know what it is, but there's groups attacking people like me, and apparently they haven't seen any of my other comments on the vaccine mandate or the fact that I have co-sponsored the repeal of OSHA's mandate. I think that this is something that industry should be figuring out. I think that that is very different than having the federal government come in and try to mandate whether it's for consumers' energy. By the way, they were under real pressure because their linemen are all considered federal contractors because they deliver electricity. This is a little far-fetched, right? And we have that with food providers. We have that with virtually anybody that was touching anything on a federal contract. And it was going to decimate. You talk to anybody in healthcare, especially in more rural areas, at Fremont Hospital, they were going to lose a huge swath of their nursing corps if this vaccine mandate went in. And so we have to have some common sense on this. And I get it. It is serious. It is. We've all have had friends and family that have had it. And some of it has been mild, and some of it has been literally people in the hospital. I understand that. I've personally felt that as well and experienced that. But we still are a country that values, I hope, some choice and our freedom and our ability to work through that. And I don't believe the federal government coming in and mandating that to certainly private industry is the right direction to go. So no, I oppose a federal mandate. I oppose a federal registry, would never vote for that, and we're going to go try and correct the record on that.
Bill, this has been a pleasure, as it always is, and we appreciate the time that you've given us. At this time, I'd like to invite Chamber President Jane Clark back up to wrap up our morning.
And can I just say thank you for the opportunity. Glad you came out. It's nice to be back in a crowd like this, to be able to have these kinds of interactions. It's something that's very valuable to us. I hope you feel it as well. And you know, this is a special place, and we're trying to preserve that and keep it that way. And appreciate the efforts that the Chamber does as well.
Well, thank you, Bill. We appreciate your open and candid conversation with both our in-person attendees and our digital attendees. Michael, thank you once again. You are a masterful MC. We appreciate you leading this event every single year. For our attendees, we invite you to come back. The Chamber has a robust advocacy and action program, and we'll be back here. This is our new venue for our governmental affairs program, so watch your calendars. We'd love to see you at our future programs. Certainly want everybody to stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you in the new year. Thank you very much for being with us.